Plato, the architect of idealism. Socrates' most famous student, Plato, 427 to 347 BCE, carried forward his teacher's ideas and expanded them into a vast philosophical system. Plato believed in the existence of a higher reality beyond the physical world, which he called the world of forms. According to him, everything in the material world is just a shadow of its perfect, ideal form. This idea deeply influenced later religious and metaphysical thought. Plato's most influential work, The Republic, presents his vision of an ideal society. He argued that a just society should be ruled by philosopher kings, individuals who possess both wisdom and moral integrity. He criticized Athenian democracy, believing that the masses were too easily swayed by emotions and demagogues. Instead, he proposed a structured society led by reason and knowledge. To preserve and promote learning, Plato founded the Academy, the first institution of higher education in the Western world. It remained active for nearly 1,000 years and became the model for modern universities. His teachings influenced many fields, from political science to psychology, and continue to shape intellectual thought today. Aristotle, the master of logic and science. One of Plato's greatest students was Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, who took philosophy in an entirely new direction. Unlike his teacher, Aristotle rejected the idea of a separate world of forms and focused on studying the physical world and human experience. He emphasized observation, empirical evidence, and systematic reasoning, making him one of the earliest pioneers of the scientific method. Aristotle contributed to nearly every field of knowledge, including ethics, politics, biology, physics, and rhetoric. His book Politics analyzed different forms of government, including democracy, monarchy, and oligarchy. His classification of governments influenced later political thinkers, including those who framed modern democratic constitutions. In the field of science, Aristotle was the first to systematically study biology, classifying animals and plants based on their characteristics. His ideas dominated scientific thought for centuries and laid the groundwork for future discoveries. Additionally, his work in logic, particularly his development of syllogism, a form of deductive reasoning, became a cornerstone of Western philosophy and mathematics. Aristotle's teachings were so influential that when Alexander the Great became his student, Aristotle's philosophical ideas spread throughout the known world. His works were later studied by Islamic scholars, medieval European thinkers, and Renaissance scientists, ensuring that his impact remained strong throughout history. The legacy of Athenian philosophy. The intellectual revolution of ancient Athens changed the way humans think about the world. The ideas of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle shaped ethics, politics, science, and logic, forming the basis of modern philosophy and education. Their influence is evident in the way universities teach critical thinking, in the democratic ideals that shape modern governments, and in the scientific methods that guide discovery. Athens was not just a city of warriors and statesmen, it was a city of ideas. It gave humanity the tools to question, to reason, and to seek truth, ensuring that the legacy of Athenian philosophy would endure for millennia. One of the most famous Athenian sculptors was Phidias, who created the massive statue of Athena inside the Parthenon and the legendary statue of Zeus at Olympia, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. His sculptures emphasized grandeur and divine beauty, reflecting the Athenian belief in human potential and excellence. Other sculptors, such as Polykleitos and Myron, introduced the concept of contrapposto, a technique that made statues appear more lifelike by depicting figures with a slight shift in weight, giving them a sense of motion and realism. This innovation influenced later artistic movements, from Roman statues to the masterpieces of the Renaissance, such as Michelangelo's David. Athenian literature, the birth of drama and poetry. Athens was the birthplace of Western literature and drama, producing some of the greatest playwrights, historians, and poets in history. Athenian literature was deeply intertwined with politics, philosophy, and mythology, exploring complex themes such as fate, justice, human nature, and the gods. The rise of Greek tragedy. Athenian theater was an essential part of public life, with dramatic performances held during religious festivals, particularly the Dionysia, a festival honoring Dionysus, the god of wine and theater. Playwrights such as Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides laid the foundation for dramatic storytelling, creating works that are still studied and performed today. Aeschylus, 525 to 456 BC, is often called the father of tragedy. He introduced the idea of multiple actors on stage, allowing for complex interactions and dramatic tension. His famous trilogy, the Orestia, explored themes of justice, revenge, and divine intervention. Sophocles, 497 to 406 BC, refined Greek tragedy, introducing strong character development and psychological depth. His masterpiece, Oedipus Rex, remains one of the most influential plays in history, exploring the concepts of fate and self-discovery. Euripides, 480 to 406 BC, broke away from traditional storytelling by focusing on human emotion and social criticism. His plays, such as Medea and the Bacchae, presented flawed and relatable characters, challenging traditional Greek values. These tragedies laid the groundwork for later literary forms, influencing Shakespearean drama, modern theater, and film storytelling, the birth of comedy. While tragedy focused on human suffering, comedy in Athens was a way to critique society, politics, and even the gods. Aristophanes, the greatest comedic playwright of ancient Greece, used satire and humor to expose the absurdities of Athenian life. His plays, such as Lysistrata, in which women refuse to have relations with their husbands until they end the war, showcase the power of comedy as a political and social tool. Athenian comedy influenced later comedic traditions, from Roman farces to modern satire, proving that humor has always been a powerful force for challenging authority and societal norms. The historians of Athens, recording human history. Athens also gave birth to the first true historians, who sought to record events in a systematic and analytical way. Unlike earlier civilizations that recorded history as mythology or propaganda, Athenian historians aimed to document events objectively and critically. Herodotus, 484 to 425 BC, known as the father of history, wrote the Histories, a detailed account of the Persian Wars. He was the first to collect oral histories and attempt to verify facts, setting the stage for modern historical writing. Ancient Athens is often remembered for its contributions to democracy, philosophy, and the arts, but it was also a formidable military power that played a crucial role in shaping the course of Western history. The Persian Wars, 499 to 449 BC, were a defining moment for Athens, showcasing its military strength, strategic brilliance, and unwavering commitment to freedom. These conflicts not only secured Greek independence, but also cemented Athens' position as a dominant force in the ancient world. The victories against the mighty Persian Empire demonstrated that a relatively small city-state, driven by unity and patriotism, could stand against one of the most powerful empires in history. The rise of the Persian threat. By the late 6th century BCE, the Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great and later Darius I, had expanded to control much of the known world, including Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. As Persia extended its reach into Greek territory, it faced resistance from independent Greek city-states, including Athens. The conflict between Greece and Persia began in 499 BCE, when the Ionian Greeks, who were under Persian rule, rebelled against the Persian king Darius I. Athens and Eretria supported the revolt, angering Darius, who vowed to punish the Athenians for their defiance. The Battle of Marathon, 490 BC, Athens stands alone. In 490 BC, Darius launched an invasion of Greece, sending a massive army to subjugate Athens. The Persians landed at Marathon, a coastal plain northeast of the city. The Athenians, though vastly outnumbered, decided to confront the Persian forces rather than wait for them to march on Athens. Under the leadership of Miltiades, the Athenian army, composed mainly of heavily armed citizen soldiers known as hoplites, engaged in battle. Despite facing an army nearly twice their size, the Athenians used superior tactics to secure a decisive victory. The hoplites, fighting in a tight phalanx formation, overwhelmed the Persian archers and lightly armored infantry. The Persian forces collapsed, suffering heavy casualties, while the Athenians lost only a few hundred men. This victory was a turning point in Greek history, proving that the Persians were not invincible and that a united Greek force could successfully resist foreign domination. According to legend, a messenger named Phidippides ran from Marathon to Athens, a distance of about 26 miles, to announce the victory before collapsing from exhaustion, an event that inspired the modern marathon race. The Second Persian Invasion, the Battle of Thermopylae, 480 BC. Following Darius' death, his son Xerxes I sought to avenge his father's defeat and launched a second invasion of Greece in 480 BC. This time, the Persian army was significantly larger, estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands, and was accompanied by a massive fleet. The Greek city-states, recognizing the dire threat, formed an alliance led by Sparta and Athens. One of the most famous battles of this campaign was the Battle of Thermopylae, where King Leonidas of Sparta and his 300 elite warriors, along with several thousand Greek allies, made a heroic stand against the Persians in a narrow mountain pass. Though ultimately defeated, their sacrifice delayed the Persian advance and inspired the Greek forces to fight with renewed determination. The naval battle of Salamis, 480 BC, Athens' greatest victory. While the Spartans fought on land, Athens turned to its navy, the most powerful in Greece. Themistocles, an Athenian general and statesman, convinced his people to invest in a fleet of triremes, fast and maneuverable warships that could outmaneuver the massive Persian navy. In 480 BC, the decisive Battle of Salamis took place in the narrow waters near Athens. Using superior tactics, the Athenian-led Greek fleet lured the larger Persian navy into a trap, where the confined space prevented them from deploying effectively. The Greek triremes rammed and sank Persian ships, causing chaos in the enemy ranks. The Persian fleet suffered a catastrophic defeat, forcing Xerxes to retreat. The victory at Salamis was one of the most important in world history. It saved Greece from Persian domination, preserved its democratic way of life, and marked the beginning of Athens' rise as a major naval power. The final victory, the Battle of Plataea, 479 BC. The following year, in 479 BC, the remaining Persian forces were defeated at the Battle of Plataea, where a combined Greek army, led by the Spartans and Athenians, delivered the final blow to Xerxes' ambitions in Greece. At the same time, the Greek navy won another major battle at Mycale, ensuring that Persian forces could no longer threaten Greece. The aftermath: Athens becomes an empire. Following the Persian Wars, Athens emerged as the leading power in Greece. To prevent future Persian invasions, it formed the Delian League, a military alliance of Greek city-states. Athens used its powerful navy to dominate the Aegean Sea and control trade routes, securing its influence over the region. Over time, however, Athens turned the League into an Athenian empire, demanding tribute from member states to fund its own ambitions, including the construction of the Parthenon and other architectural wonders. The Persian Wars and their lasting impact. The Persian Wars were a pivotal moment in history. Had Persia conquered Greece, Western civilization as we know it might have developed very differently. Athens' military strength, strategic brilliance, and determination to protect its freedom ensured that Greek culture, democracy, and philosophy would survive and flourish. These wars also set the stage for the Golden Age of Athens, during which the city reached its peak in politics, arts, and intellectual achievement. Ancient Athens was not only a center of military power and political innovation but also the birthplace of Western philosophy and intellectual thought. During the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, Athens produced some of the greatest thinkers in history, whose ideas continue to influence modern philosophy, science, ethics, politics, and education. Philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid the foundation for critical thinking, rational inquiry, and the pursuit of knowledge, creating a tradition of thought that would be passed down through generations and shape civilizations across the world. Athens' emphasis on education, debate, and open discourse created an environment where philosophy could thrive. Schools and public forums, such as the Agora, the marketplace and center of public life, became places where intellectuals gathered to discuss ideas, question traditions, and seek deeper understanding of human nature, morality, and the universe. Unlike other societies that relied on religious or mythological explanations for the world, the Athenians embraced reason and logic, seeking explanations based on evidence, ethics, and systematic thought. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. One of the most influential figures in Athenian intellectual history was Socrates, 469 to 399 BCE, a philosopher who revolutionized the way people thought about knowledge, ethics, and truth. Unlike previous philosophers who focused on the physical nature of the universe, Socrates turned his attention to human behavior, morality, and the meaning of life. Instead of writing books, Socrates engaged in public debates, questioning people from all walks of life, from politicians and poets to craftsmen and generals, to expose contradictions in their beliefs. His method of questioning, known as the Socratic method, involved asking probing questions to stimulate critical thinking and uncover deeper truths. This technique is still widely used today in law, education, and scientific research. Socrates' radical approach made him a controversial figure in Athens. Many saw him as a threat to traditional values and accused him of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. In 399 BCE, he was put on trial and sentenced to death. Offered a chance to escape, he chose to accept his fate, drinking a cup of poisoned hemlock rather than fleeing and abandoning his principles. His death became one of the most famous moments in intellectual history, symbolizing the power of free thought and the pursuit of truth, even in the face of persecution. Plato, the visionary philosopher. Socrates' most famous student, Plato, 427 to 347 BCE, carried on his mentor's work and expanded Athenian philosophy in new directions. After Socrates' execution, Plato left Athens for a time, but later returned to establish the Academy, one of the first institutions of higher learning in the Western world. The Academy would become a model for future universities, educating generations of thinkers, including his most famous student, Aristotle. Plato's ideas were recorded in dialogues, written works where he used fictional conversations between Socrates and others to explore deep philosophical issues. Some of his most famous works include The Republic, a vision of an ideal society where justice, wisdom, and the rule of philosopher kings create a harmonious civilization. The Symposium, a discussion on the nature of love and beauty. The Apology, a defense of Socrates' life and philosophy. The Allegory of the Cave, a metaphor for human ignorance and enlightenment, illustrating how people often mistake illusions for reality. Plato believed in the concept of forms, an idea that physical objects are mere imitations of perfect, eternal ideas that exist beyond human perception. His philosophical system influenced Christian theology, Renaissance thinkers, and modern metaphysics, making him one of the most enduring philosophers in history. Aristotle, the master of knowledge. Perhaps the most influential Athenian philosopher was Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, a student of Plato who took philosophy in an entirely new direction. Unlike his teacher, who focused on abstract ideals, Aristotle emphasized empirical observation and logical reasoning, laying the groundwork for modern science, ethics, and politics. Aristotle's works covered almost every field of knowledge, including logic. He developed the first formal system of reasoning, known as syllogism, which became the basis of logical thought. Biology. He classified plants and animals based on their characteristics, making him the father of early biology. Ethics. His book Nicomachean Ethics explored the concept of virtue and the golden mean, where moderation is the key to a good life. Politics. He analyzed different forms of government in politics, arguing that the best government balances democracy, monarchy, and aristocracy. Physics and astronomy. Though some of his ideas were later disproven, his influence shaped medieval and Renaissance science. Aristotle's ideas influenced Islamic scholars, medieval Christian philosophers, and the Enlightenment thinkers of Europe, ensuring his legacy as one of the most important intellectuals in human history. The Athenian intellectual tradition, the foundation of modern thought. Beyond Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, Athens nurtured a culture of intellectual curiosity that extended into fields such as mathematics, rhetoric, medicine, and astronomy. Athenian scholars made groundbreaking contributions in these fields. Pythagoras and Euclid laid the foundations for geometry, creating mathematical principles still used today. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, developed medical ethics and scientific methods that shaped modern medicine. Democritus proposed the idea that everything is made of tiny particles called atoms, an idea that foreshadowed modern atomic theory. Heraclitus and Anaxagoras explored the nature of change, the universe, and the elements, influencing later scientific thought. Athens' commitment to reason, education, and debate created an environment where ideas could be exchanged freely. Public debates, schools, and philosophical discussions in the Agora encouraged citizens to question authority, seek knowledge, and challenge traditional beliefs, principles that remain at the heart of modern academia and scientific inquiry. The enduring legacy of Athenian philosophy. The intellectual advancements of ancient Athens did not fade with time. Instead, they formed the foundation of Western civilization, influencing everything from modern democratic principles to scientific reasoning and ethical philosophy. The works of Athenian philosophers were preserved and studied by Roman scholars, Islamic philosophers during the Golden Age of Islam, and Renaissance thinkers, ensuring that the Athenian tradition of rational thought would endure. Today, the influence of Athens can be seen in modern universities, legal systems, scientific research, and philosophical inquiry. The methods of logic, debate, and empirical observation developed in ancient Athens continue to shape the way we understand the world, govern societies, and seek truth. Athens' intellectual revolution remains one of its greatest contributions to humanity, proving that the pursuit of knowledge is one of the most powerful forces in history. One of the greatest legacies of ancient Athens is its development of democracy, a system of government that has influenced political institutions worldwide for over 2 millennia. Unlike the monarchies, oligarchies, and authoritarian regimes that dominated much of the ancient world, Athens pioneered a form of governance where power resided in the hands of the people. This radical experiment in self-rule, though imperfect by modern standards, laid the foundation for many of the democratic principles that exist today. The Athenian democracy was not a single event, but rather an evolving system that developed over centuries, shaped by the contributions of various leaders and reformers. It was characterized by direct participation, citizen equality among free men, and institutional structures that encouraged civic engagement. The principles of Athenian democracy continue to inspire modern political thought, demonstrating how a city-state of just a few 100,000 people forever changed the way societies govern themselves. The evolution of Athenian democracy. The journey toward democracy in Athens was not immediate. It was the result of political struggles, social movements, and visionary leaders who reshaped the governance of the city-state over time. The early oligarchies and the rule of the aristocrats. Before democracy took root, Athens was ruled by aristocratic families who controlled political power through the Areopagus, a council of noblemen. Ordinary citizens had little influence, and governance was dominated by wealthy landowners and elite families. The power of these aristocrats was often challenged by the common people, the demos, leading to political unrest and calls for reform. The reforms of Solon, the first steps toward equality. A major turning point came in the 6th century BCE when the statesman Solon, c. 638 to 558 BCE, introduced reforms that weakened the grip of aristocrats and expanded political participation. Recognizing the growing discontent among the lower classes, Solon enacted laws that abolished debt slavery, freeing many Athenians who had been forced into servitude due to unpaid debts. Reorganized the political structure, dividing Athenians into 4 social classes based on wealth rather than birth. Created the Council of 400, an early form of representative government that allowed broader participation in decision-making. Although Solon's reforms did not create a full democracy, they paved the way for a more inclusive political system and reduced the absolute power of the aristocrats. The rise of Cleisthenes, the true architect of Athenian democracy. The next major reformer was Cleisthenes, c. 570 to 508 BC, often called the father of Athenian democracy. In 508 BC, he introduced a series of reforms that transformed Athens into the world's first known democracy. His key achievements included the creation of the Council of 500 Bull, which was responsible for proposing laws and policies. The division of Athens into 10 new tribes, breaking the power of aristocratic families and fostering a sense of unity among citizens. The introduction of ostracism, a practice where citizens could vote to exile individuals deemed a threat to democracy. Cleisthenes' reforms allowed a greater number of Athenians to participate in government, making politics more representative of the general population. However, Athenian democracy was still limited. Women, slaves, and non-citizens were excluded from political life. How Athenian democracy functioned. Athenian democracy was a direct democracy, meaning that citizens did not elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf. Instead, they participated directly in decision-making. The government was composed of several key institutions. 1. The Ecclesia Assembly, the heart of Athenian democracy. The Ecclesia was the central governing body of Athens, where all eligible male citizens, approximately 30,000 in total, could attend, debate, and vote on major policies and laws. It met regularly on the Nix, a hill in Athens, and was responsible for passing laws and decrees, deciding on war and foreign policy, electing public officials, holding public debates on important issues. Participation in the ecclesia was not limited by wealth or status. Every free male citizen had the right to attend and speak, making it one of the earliest forms of popular sovereignty in history. 2. The Bull, Council of 500, the administrative backbone. The Bull was a council of 500 citizens, chosen by lottery from the 10 tribes of Athens. This system ensured that power was not concentrated in the hands of the elite and that government positions were accessible to ordinary citizens. The Bull's main responsibilities included preparing legislation for the ecclesia to vote on, supervising government officials, managing financial affairs and military matters. By rotating members every year and using lotteries, Athens prevented corruption and concentrated power, ensuring a broader distribution of political responsibility. 3. The courts, dikasteria, justice by the people. Athenian democracy placed a strong emphasis on legal equality and developed one of the earliest judicial systems based on citizen participation. The dikasteria, courts, were made up of large juries, often consisting of 500 or more citizens, who were randomly selected to hear cases and deliver verdicts. Unlike modern legal systems, there were no judges or lawyers. Citizens prosecuted and defended themselves, and jury decisions were final. This system ensured that justice was in the hands of the people, rather than controlled by a ruling class. The Athenian belief in equal justice under the law influenced later legal traditions, including those of Rome and modern democracies. The limitations of Athenian democracy. While Athens' democratic experiment was groundbreaking, it had significant flaws by modern standards. Women, slaves, and non-citizens, medics, were excluded from political participation. Only about 10 to 15% of Athens' population could vote. Democracy was fragile and could be manipulated by powerful orators, leading to poor decision-making in times of crisis, e.g., the execution of Socrates. Direct democracy was difficult to maintain as Athens grew, making decision-making slow and often chaotic. Despite these limitations, Athenian democracy pioneered the idea that governance should be based on the will of the people, inspiring later democratic movements worldwide. The legacy of Athenian democracy. Athenian democracy did not last forever. It was severely weakened during the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, against Sparta, and was briefly replaced by oligarchic rule. However, the principles it established survived and influenced future generations. The ideas of citizen participation, rule by law, and public debate were adopted and refined by the Roman Republic, which incorporated democratic elements in its government. The Enlightenment thinkers such as John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who built upon Athenian principles to advocate for modern democracy. The Founding Fathers of the United States, who used Athenian ideals to shape the U.S. Constitution and democratic institutions. Today, The legacy of Athenian democracy can be seen in modern democratic systems, where ideas like popular sovereignty, legislative debate, trial by jury, and civic duty continue to shape political life across the world. Athens' democratic experiment, despite its limitations, remains one of the most influential political innovations in human history. While ancient Athens is best known for its contributions to democracy, philosophy, and culture, it was also a formidable military power that played a crucial role in shaping the course of history. The strength of Athens' military was essential in both defending its democratic system and projecting its influence across the Greek world. Despite not being as militarized as Sparta, Athens developed one of the most powerful navies of the ancient world, allowing it to establish dominance over the Aegean Sea and expand its political and economic reach. Athens' military strength was built on two key pillars: its highly skilled navy and its well-trained hoplite army. These forces were not just used for warfare, but also for protecting trade routes, securing resources, and maintaining Athenian influence over its allies in the Delian League. Over time, Athens' military prowess allowed it to defeat formidable enemies, resist invasions, and establish itself as a dominant force in the Greek world. The Athenian hoplites, the backbone of land warfare. The Athenian hoplites were the city's heavily armed foot soldiers, trained to fight in a phalanx formation, a tightly packed rectangular unit where soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with overlapping shields. This formation provided strong defense and offensive power, making it difficult for enemy forces to break through. Each hoplite was typically a citizen soldier, meaning that military service was a civic duty rather than a profession. Hoplites were usually well equipped with a hoplon shield, a large, round wooden shield covered in bronze, providing strong protection. A dory spear, a long spear used for thrusting at enemies in close combat. A short sword, xiphos, a secondary weapon used if the spear was lost. Bronze armor, including a helmet, breastplate, and greaves for protection. Unlike the Spartans, who trained for war from childhood, Athenian hoplites were primarily farmers, artisans, and merchants who trained in times of war. Despite this, they proved to be highly effective in battle, playing key roles in major wars against Persia and rival Greek city-states. One of the most famous victories of Athenian hoplites was at the Battle of Marathon 490 BC during the Persian Wars, where a heavily outnumbered Athenian army defeated the mighty Persian forces of King Darius I. This victory not only protected Athens from Persian conquest, but also demonstrated the effectiveness of the citizen-soldier model, inspiring future generations of Athenians to defend their democracy with pride. The Athenian navy, masters of the sea. While the hoplites were crucial for land battles, the true power of Athens lay in its navy. The Athenian fleet was composed of triremes, fast and agile warships that were designed for ramming enemy vessels. Each trireme was manned by 200 skilled rowers, who worked in perfect coordination to maneuver the ship at high speeds. The triremes were essential for defending Athens from naval invasions, controlling trade routes, and expanding Athenian influence. Naval power allowed Athens to dominate the Aegean Sea, securing its position as the leader of the Delian League, a powerful alliance of Greek city-states formed to counter the Persian threat. The most significant test of Athens' naval power came during the Battle of Salamis, 480 BC, one of the most decisive naval battles in history. The Persian king Xerxes I launched a massive invasion of Greece, seeking to conquer Athens and the rest of the Greek world. Outnumbered and facing total destruction, the Athenian fleet, under the leadership of Themistocles, devised a brilliant strategy. The Athenians lured the Persian navy into the narrow straits of Salamis, where their large numbers became a disadvantage. The faster and more maneuverable Athenian triremes outflanked the Persian ships, ramming and sinking them. The Persian fleet suffered a crushing defeat, forcing Xerxes to retreat and saving Athens from conquest. The victory at Salamis was a turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars and solidified Athens as the dominant naval power in Greece. Without its navy, Athens might have fallen to Persia, and the course of Western civilization would have been drastically altered. The Delian League, Athens' military empire. After the defeat of the Persians, Athens used its military strength to establish the Delian League, an alliance of Greek city-states originally formed to defend against future Persian attacks. However, over time, Athens transformed the League into an Athenian empire, using military force to keep its allies in line. The navy played a key role in maintaining Athenian dominance, ensuring that allies continued paying tribute and following Athenian rule. Cities that tried to leave the League, such as Naxos and Thassos, were brutally suppressed. The wealth accumulated through the League allowed Athens to fund massive public works projects, including the construction of the Parthenon and other monuments of the Golden Age. While the Delian League brought prosperity to Athens, it also created tensions with other Greek city-states, particularly Sparta, leading to the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC. The Peloponnesian War, the fall of Athenian military supremacy. Despite its military prowess, Athens eventually faced a challenge it could not overcome: the might of Sparta and the Peloponnesian League. The Peloponnesian War was a long and brutal conflict between Athens and Sparta, with both sides suffering immense losses. The Athenian navy remained powerful, but Sparta adapted by building its own fleet with the help of Persia. A devastating plague struck Athens in 430 BCE, killing tens of thousands, including its great leader Pericles. The Sicilian expedition, 415 to 413 BCE, a disastrous military campaign against Syracuse, led to the destruction of much of the Athenian fleet. Finally, in 404 BCE, Athens was forced to surrender to Sparta, marking the end of its dominance as a military power. The defeat did not erase Athens' military legacy, but it ended its time as the greatest power in Greece. Even though Athens would never regain its former military strength, its naval and military strategies continued to influence later civilizations, including Rome and Byzantium. The lasting impact of Athenian military power. The military strength of Athens was not just about conquest or defense. It was about protecting democracy, ensuring trade, and securing Athenian influence across the Mediterranean world. Without its powerful military, Athens would never have been able to defeat the Persians, saving Greek civilization from foreign domination. Establish the Delian League, which helped spread Athenian culture and ideals. Expand democracy, as a strong military was necessary to maintain stability. Influence later naval and military strategies, inspiring future empires such as Rome and Byzantium. Even after Athens' decline, its military innovations and strategies remained a model for future civilizations, proving that military power, when combined with political and cultural achievements, can shape the destiny of a nation and the world. Ancient Athens was not only the birthplace of democracy and philosophy, but also a center of artistic and architectural innovation that left an enduring mark on Western civilization. The city's cultural achievements in sculpture, pottery, theater, and architecture set the standard for beauty, harmony, and balance, principles that continue to influence art and design today. Athenian culture was deeply intertwined with its democratic ideals, religious beliefs, and military successes, creating a rich artistic legacy that reflected the spirit of human excellence, civic pride, and devotion to the gods. The Athenian Golden Age, 5th century BCE, under the leadership of Pericles, saw an explosion of artistic expression. Monumental structures, breathtaking sculptures, and dramatic performances flourished, many of which have inspired artists, architects, and playwrights for over 2 millennia. The Athenians did not create art merely for decoration. They saw it as a way to celebrate their achievements, honor the gods, and express their understanding of the human experience. Athenian architecture, engineering beauty and strength. One of Athens' greatest contributions to world culture was its architectural mastery, particularly the development of the classical architectural style, characterized by symmetry, proportion, and grandeur. The most famous example of Athenian architecture is the Acropolis, a hilltop citadel that housed some of the city's most magnificent structures. The Parthenon, a symbol of Athenian power and artistry. At the heart of the Acropolis stood the Parthenon, the most iconic and influential structure of ancient Athens. Built between 447 and 432 BCE, the Parthenon was dedicated to Athena, the patron goddess of Athens. Designed by architects Dionysus and Callicrates and overseen by the sculptor Phidias, the Parthenon was a testament to Athenian engineering skills and artistic brilliance. It was constructed using white marble from Mount Pentelicus, which still glows golden under sunlight. The Doric columns, carefully proportioned, created an illusion of perfect symmetry and harmony. The sculptural decorations, including the famous Parthenon frieze, depicted religious ceremonies, mythological battles, and the glory of Athens. The Parthenon was not just a temple, but a symbol of Athenian identity, democracy, and cultural supremacy. Even in ruins, it remains one of the most admired and studied buildings in human history. Other architectural marvels of Athens. The Erechtheion, known for its caryatid porch, featuring 6 elegantly sculpted female figures serving as columns. The Temple of Hephaestus, one of the best-preserved Greek temples, honoring the god of fire and craftsmanship. The Theater of Dionysus, the birthplace of Greek drama, where playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes presented their masterpieces. These structures demonstrated the Athenian pursuit of excellence, arete, where art and engineering were combined to create monuments that stood the test of time. Athenian sculpture, the pursuit of perfection. Athenian sculptors revolutionized art by moving away from the rigid, lifeless figures of earlier times and developing a more naturalistic and dynamic style. The sculptors of Athens sought to capture movement, emotion, and idealized human beauty, reflecting their deep appreciation for the human form. Phidias, the greatest sculptor of Athens, created the colossal statue of Athena that once stood in the Parthenon and the statue of Zeus at Olympia, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Myron mastered the depiction of movement, best seen in his famous Discobolus, discus thrower, sculpture. Polykleitos introduced the canon of proportions, a mathematical system for achieving perfect balance in sculptures. Athenian sculpture celebrated the strength, intellect, and beauty of the human body, influencing later artistic movements, including Renaissance art and neoclassicism. Athenian drama and theater, the birth of storytelling. Athens gave birth to theater as an art form, creating the foundations for modern drama, tragedy, and comedy. The Theater of Dionysus, located at the foot of the Acropolis, was the center of Athenian dramatic performances, where citizens gathered to watch plays that explored themes of fate, morality, politics, and the gods. Tragedy, exploring the human condition. Athenian tragedy was deeply philosophical, addressing human suffering, justice, and the will of the gods. The greatest playwrights of Athens shaped this genre. Aeschylus, known as the father of tragedy, he introduced the idea of conflict between divine will and human ambition. His play The Orestia is a powerful exploration of justice and vengeance. Sophocles, his masterpiece, Oedipus Rex, remains one of the most profound explorations of fate and free will. Euripides, he focused on psychological depth and the struggles of marginalized figures, such as Medea, a powerful tale of betrayal and revenge. Comedy, satirizing society and politics. Alongside tragedy, Athens also developed comedy, a genre used to mock political leaders, social norms, and philosophical ideas. Aristophanes, the greatest comedic playwright, wrote works such as Lysistrata, in which Athenian women refuse to sleep with their husbands until they end the war. His plays were bitingly satirical, often making fun of Athenian democracy, politicians, and even Socrates himself. Athenian drama was more than entertainment. It was a way for society to reflect on itself, critique authority, and explore the depths of human nature. Athenian literature, music, and poetry, the soul of Greek culture. Athenians were master storytellers, poets, and musicians who immortalized their history and emotions through words and melody. Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, though older than Athens' Golden Age, were foundational texts that every educated Athenian knew. Herodotus and Thucydides, the fathers of history, developed the practice of writing historical accounts based on evidence and analysis, shaping modern historiography. Sappho and Pindar, 2 of Greece's greatest poets, perfected lyric poetry, expressing themes of love, heroism, and the divine. Music was also a key part of Athenian life, played during religious ceremonies, festivals, and theatrical performances, enhancing the emotional impact of plays and poetry. The global influence of Athenian art and culture. Athenian art, architecture, and theater were not confined to the Greek world. They influenced Roman culture, Renaissance artists, and even modern storytelling. The Romans adopted Greek architecture, designing buildings with columns and domes inspired by Athenian temples. Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci studied Athenian sculptures to perfect human anatomy in their art. Hollywood and modern theater still follow the structures of Greek drama, with tragic heroes, comedic satire, and epic storytelling. Athenian culture represents the pursuit of excellence, creativity, and intellectual depth, proving that art and ideas can transcend time and shape civilizations across the ages. Introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, today we journey back over 2,500 years to a city that shaped the very foundations of our modern world, Ancient Athens. From the birth of democracy to groundbreaking achievements in philosophy, art, and science, Athens was a beacon of human progress. Let us explore how this remarkable city rose to become the most influential society in history. One of the most defining contributions of ancient Athens to world history was the invention of democracy. Before Athens' radical experiment in self-rule, most societies were governed by monarchs, aristocrats, or oligarchs, where power was concentrated in the hands of a few. However, during the late 6th and early 5th centuries BCE, Athenian leaders, most notably Cleisthenes, introduced a new political system that put power into the hands of ordinary citizens. This revolutionary system, known as direct democracy, allowed male citizens to participate in decision-making, shaping laws and policies that governed their city-state. The Athenian democratic system was built on key institutions that ensured the participation of its people. The ecclesia, assembly, was the heart of the government, where any free male citizen over the age of 18 could attend, debate, and vote on crucial issues, including laws, war, and foreign policy. The Bull, Council of 500, was responsible for setting the agenda for the assembly and overseeing the administration of the city. Members of the Bull were chosen by lottery, ensuring that governance was not limited to the elite but open to all classes. Additionally, the dikasteria, courts, played a crucial role in upholding justice. Athenian citizens served as jurors, sometimes in groups of up to 500 or even 1,500, deciding legal disputes without professional judges, making the legal system truly people-driven. One of the most fascinating aspects of Athenian democracy was its emphasis on active participation. Unlike modern representative democracies, where elected officials make decisions on behalf of the people, Athenian citizens were expected to be directly involved in politics. It was not just a right but a civic duty to attend assembly meetings and vote on policies. Citizens who failed to participate were often looked down upon and even fined in some cases. This level of engagement created a strong sense of responsibility and ownership over public affairs. However, Athenian democracy was far from perfect. It excluded large sections of the population, including women, slaves, and non-citizens medics, who made up a significant portion of the city's population. Moreover, the system was vulnerable to demagogues, charismatic leaders who manipulated public opinion for personal gain. One famous example is Alcibiades, whose influence led Athens into disastrous military campaigns. Despite these flaws, Athenian democracy was groundbreaking and laid the foundation for the democratic ideals that would later be refined by the Roman Republic, the Enlightenment thinkers, and modern democratic nations. The influence of Athenian democracy is still felt today. The fundamental principles of citizen participation, rule of law, and equal political rights have shaped modern governments across the world. Countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and many others have incorporated elements of Athenian governance, including public debates, jury trials, and legislative bodies that reflect the will of the people. Even though we live in an era of representative democracy rather than direct democracy, the spirit of Athens lives on in the way we value political freedom, civic engagement, and the power of the people to shape their government. The period following the Persian Wars marked the Golden Age of Athens, 480 to 404 BC, a time of unparalleled political, cultural, and intellectual achievement. Under the leadership of Pericles, Athens transformed into the most powerful and influential city-state in the Greek world. This era saw the expansion of democracy, monumental architectural projects, artistic flourishing, and philosophical breakthroughs that would shape Western civilization for centuries. Athens' dominance during this period was not just a result of its military victories, but also of its economic prosperity and naval supremacy. The city became the center of trade, education, and innovation, attracting scholars, artists, and statesmen from all over Greece and beyond. This period solidified Athens' legacy as the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, and many of the principles that continue to define modern society. Ancient Athens was not only the birthplace of democracy, but also the cradle of Western philosophy. The city nurtured some of the greatest minds in history, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, whose ideas laid the intellectual foundation for centuries to come. Their contributions shaped disciplines such as ethics, logic, politics, metaphysics, and epistemology, influencing everything from modern education to political theory. The intellectual revolution that took place in Athens transformed the way humanity approached knowledge, reason, and the very meaning of existence. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. Socrates, 470 to 399 BCE, is often regarded as the father of Western philosophy. Unlike earlier thinkers who focused on explaining the natural world, Socrates shifted the focus toward human nature, ethics, and morality. He developed a unique method of questioning, now known as the Socratic method, which encouraged people to think critically and challenge their own beliefs. Rather than providing direct answers, Socrates would ask a series of probing questions to expose contradictions in people's thinking. This method of reasoning became the foundation of critical thinking and is still widely used in modern education, law, and debate. His famous quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living," emphasizes the importance of self-reflection and intellectual inquiry. However, Socrates' ideas were seen as dangerous by Athenian authorities. His questioning of traditional beliefs and his criticism of Athenian democracy led to his trial in 399 BCE, where he was accused of corrupting the youth and impiety. He was sentenced to death and chose to drink a cup of hemlock rather than flee into exile. His martyrdom for the pursuit of knowledge cemented his legacy, inspiring countless philosophers who came after him.